Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be looking at what I consider to be a very uh, wonderful yet dangerous game. The Walking Dead universe by AMC by Free League Games. So you have a very large name, The Walking Dead universe. Like many others, I don't understand why the universe has to be there, but obviously that's a PR thing. Um, It is a game where you are not just simply facing zombies. And this is more akin to the TV show, and I think that the game by Free League has captured this. It's essentially mechanically, if you're aware of Free League products, and if you're watching this, you probably are, that it's using the Year Zero engine and particularly two mechanics. One from Vaesen, where you have 3 strikes and you get to roll on the critical. So um, you begin with 3, 2, 1, and then broken. So that's important for players to understand that, you know, 3 hits and you're going to get a roll on the critical. And from, I believe it's 64 on to 66, you're just going to die. And I believe it's up to 46. It may actually be in the 30s. Um, no, I think it's in the 40s where it's a basic medical check, and then it goes on to advanced medical checks, where you need to have more, uh, a hospital or a clinic or more more medical attention. Um, Basic being kind of what you can carry in a kit. The so that's the first is a very Vaesen or Vaesen-esque type of damage system. The other implementation is of stress dice. So different colored dice. The 1 is marked, and the 6 is marked. So a 6 is a 6. It's a success regardless. And in the game itself, a 6, all you need for a difficult situation is 1 6 out of all of your dice. You can roll 10 dice, you can roll 2 dice, you can roll 1 dice. You'll always get to roll 1 dice. But in a difficult situation, just 1 is sufficient. 2, if it's improbable, maybe, and if you're thinking percentage-wise, 80% up, really kind of really difficult. And then impossible is 3 successes. So in Coriolis, 3 successes is a crit, and so it is very possible, but they're expecting you to push more. I think from what I can gauge is pushing is much more serious in this game, and there is definitely a consequence to pushing your roll. So the mechanic is that if you're pushing, you're going to add a stress dice, and there will be certain conditions that are going to be ascribed to you, and you're going to increase how many stress dice you have that replace your pool. So if you have 6 dice to roll and you have 2 stress, then you're going to be adding 2 dice and you're going to be rolling those, increasing to 31, 32, whatever percent chance of rolling a 1. Obviously, you get a higher chance of rolling a 6, but if you roll a 1 on those particular dice, you're going to have messed up. And messed up has consequences, and they are described in the book as to how they manifest. Noise is really important, obviously, and you know, being caught unaware by a zombie. But it's not, as I said in the beginning, it's not simply a zombie game. And so it's fun in the sense that you get to play in this world that is seen on TV. Many games are built around uh, books and television shows, movies, uh, anime, donghua, stuff like that. So we are building on a tradition that has come down to us from eons. So that in itself is fun. Um, but the danger is that if you are very serious about lines and veils and X cards, this I would say is probably the most, this has the most potential for triggers in individuals, whether they have, and I'm talking about the character, the people themselves, not the characters, the people who are around your table. If they have trauma, if they have PTSD, if they have any type of psychological issues that they are not comfortable with or talking about, if they have trauma from the past with abuse of many different kinds, if they have issues around, um, and I'm talking everything, and I'm not, and I'm not trying to be exaggerated on this, but if you have vegans around the table who are very uncomfortable at talking about any type of pet or animal abuse or death, um, or anybody who is extremely sensitive to possibly a child's death, this may be a minefield for the GM. I was surprised at how little there's been discussion on the internet. Maybe it's just because the beta has been released. Today is the 23rd of June, and Free League has released an email to backers saying essentially that it's baked, and essentially they just needed to tweak some definitions, add a scenario, and those clarifications and spelling errors, grammatical errors that have been found are essentially done. So you're not going to see any major changes to what the beta has to offer if you're a backer or if you're planning on backing or buying this game, depending on when you're watching this. I think that the reason why there aren't as many videos on this is because I think people are reading this and realizing that this is a great game, but it's a minefield in this world where we are very sensitive to upsetting anyone around the table. This game is going to upset you. This is going to upset you as a GM. It's going to upset the people around the table. And my advice is if you've got a 3-hour session, play for 2.5 hours, probably with a minor break, bathroom break in between, but play for your 2.5 hours and then have half an hour to debrief, or 20, at least 15 minutes to debrief, because it is charged with the potential of lines and veils and X cards and all sorts of stuff. And it's not, I don't believe that this is going to be a sexual minefield at all. That is not the problem. I think racism has a possibility of arising if you want to play in a real world setting in Atlanta, or anywhere in the world for that matter, because of the uh, inability of humanity to deal with our racism. Um, I mean, it's appalling, I think, to sensible people, uh, but it's a reality that is part and parcel of the stressors and tensions within a game like this, or can possibly be. That doesn't mean you have to employ it, but we know it's there. Now we can withdraw from that, and this is why fantasy is safe, is because we can clear off all of those horrific details of humanity and society and fears and aggressions. But in this game, your main problem is humanity itself. Um, I would say in Vaesen, it's the switch between uh, an agrarian society and a technological society, and how the environment is changing you. In this game, you're changing yourself. You have to survive. You have to scout. You have to go around and you have to make a difference with other havens, with your own haven, trying to protect yourself, trying to protect the group around the table as PCs and characters, but you're also going to be dealing with trying to protect each other from situations that will arise that you get yourself into. Now, I'm not saying that racism is going to be the first and foremost, by no means. I think that it's the least, the one that you can probably not deal with the most. But when you're talking about animals and how are you going to survive, an animal is going to get killed. If you bring a pet into a haven and you're playing the game in the real dramatic fashion that it's supposed to be played, your dog is food. Um, and I don't think that when we bought into the Walking Dead universe, and maybe that is a good way of describing the game, is because you're dealing with a universe where society has gone to crap, and all of our sins, if you want to put it in that way, or all of our vices are coming to the fore for self-preservation. So the game mechanics are such that, you know, they're pushing the game forward. They're constantly asking you to narrate, constantly asking you to step into the character itself and to live that character. Well, if you're truly embodying your character as an actor would, then you're living out that character in a way where food scarcity, potential threats, whether real or not, there's going to be a paranoia, there's going to be suspicion, there's going to be lying, there's going to be everything, and there's going to be abuse, there's going to be fights, there's going to be bust-ups, there's going to be getting kicked out of a haven, there's going to be choices. You sit around the table, you have your group, but then you also have NPCs that are part of your group. You have 5 NPCs that are going to be with you in your haven or in your entourage. You're moving around. There's one particular group that has a woman who has a great tech skill. That tech skill should be something that is greatly valued. She is an asset, but she's in a wheelchair. Now, this has the potential of conflict, especially who's going to be left behind. Are you going to protect her? There's another PC whose attachment to this person in the wheelchair is such that they will do anything to protect this person. So you're dealing with that type of interaction. So you have a drive. Your drive is what keeps you alive? What keeps you going? The other thing is, what are your issues? What's the garbage in your background? What's your vice? What's the thing that is your dark secret, if you want to use Vaesen? I think that, again, it's going to be great for storytelling, amazing for the way that it's evocative of the world, and that can be fun to a limit until you start having to make decisions about who are you going to throw in front of the zombie to survive. And are you going to be the savior of the group and sacrifice yourself and go into the front? Um, and to what extent are you around the table going to be able to navigate being a player character, okay, who is a fictional character, playing that appropriately to how you envision that character, and then have a table full of other people playing characters, but then there's you behind the character and how you are mature about dealing with one another around the table with what can potentially be very serious lines and veils and the potential for raising X cards. And I think that if you do play with lines and veils and X cards, not only do you have to specify what your limits are, but you also have to realize that in this game, it's not going to be fun if everything is identified as a line and veil. It's going to be difficult to not involve psychological trauma. This is a world where psychological trauma is the norm and not the exception. So I liken this game to 10 Candles, where you're snuffing out a candle. You actually light 10 candles. You're snuffing out a candle around a group as the darkness of the world, whether it's nuclear holocaust or alien invasion, but at the end of this, your character dies, and you're going through in that role playing game. You're going through uh, the angst of grief, grief that is in the midst of coming. You're dealing with mortality issues. In this game, you're constantly dealing with mortality issues because you're dealing with how do I survive in a world that is basically attacking me. And you can, as a GM, say to the group, okay, you're not allowed to fight amongst yourselves. You can try, but I think that there are definitely going to be tensions that arise. That has to be managed. And you can say as a GM, well, to solve this problem later on, but it has a great potential of pissing people off around the table. So it's like 10 Candles, and then it's also like a board game. Diplomacy. Diplomacy is excellent in its thought. I believe that it came out in the 50s. Absolutely brilliant game. Simple mechanics. But the whole game is lying and deception. And it's known in the board game world as the game where you will lose friends. You will lose friends. The more friends are lost over diplomacy than any other probable game. Mention in the comments if you do know of a game that's worse than diplomacy. This is, this game, The Walking Dead universe, has the potential of really messing up relationships around the table, especially if you're close group playing face to face. If you're online, you may be able to address it beforehand because you're not close in real life. But just be careful. I think this is a minefield of issues. I do believe that it's a great game. I think that the mechanisms that are in place in the game are very, very good. I have no problem with the mechanisms. Um, I think that the group collective and the collective to survive and to keep each other going because you all have a skill set that is needed um, is the essential group drive. But if you get into situations where you are at you're at odds with one another and communication is starting to impose upon you by the NPCs and by the world around you, and then by the zombies, which is the added kind of major threat in a way. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. The greatest threat are the NPCs, the people that you're around. And they could be the nicest people in the world. There are famous scenes in The Walking Dead. Spoilers, so fast forward this a bit. Especially where you have the two children and the girl kills her sister. I mean, that's a trigger for a lot of people. Uh, Infanticide is horrific in a game. This is not your high fantasy gaming. This is tough. And as a GM, you're going to have a lot to manage. So getting back to kind of the structure per se is like every free league game, you've got your attributes. You've got strength, agility, wits, and empathy. They're divided up, I think, quite well. I think that there's survival and scouting. To me, there's a fine line between those two. I'm not dismissive of those two. Medicine is under empathy. Again, I would say that it could be tech as much as empathy, but they have to stick it in somewhere. And that's how I felt about it. But I don't think that it's a major deal breaker. As a GM, if you're used to the Year Zero engine, you're able to mitigate that or just switch it around. Situationally, you'll be able to deal with it. One of the implicit kind of rules is you're going to have an anchor. And your anchor is somebody that you are definitely attached to. If they die, you may very well fall apart. And that is very bad because that's going to increase your potential for losing it. And again, losing it is an emotional response, a psychological response. And you're attached always to two characters. One is an NPC and one is a PC around the table. So you're not just safe by saying, okay, well, buddy over there is my anchor. You've got an NPC that you're anchored to. If they die, you're going to be affected. So mechanically, it involves you in taking care of at least an NPC. Challenges may arise from your own issues or the issues of your haven. But there are two modes, blah, blah, blah. Campaign mode, survival being quicker, campaign being longer. I see this game, to be honest, going to about 10 sessions and then probably saying, okay, let's move on to the next, let's move on to something else. In terms of another game. Oh, let's play Coriolis. Oh, I see that Dragonbane is out. Oh, I'd like to play the One Ring. Personally, I don't see it going beyond. Now, I'm going to play 9 sessions in the summer with young people, with people who are basically 14, 15. Now, that's going to be a challenge because of what I've said about these emotional boundaries, and we are going to debrief afterwards. And I have spoken to parents. I've got them to sign off. I've got all of this kind of information so that they know. I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge just because of the age group, but I think that given that every one of them has seen the show, you know, in a way, they know what they're in for. In another way, they're going to be having to deal with emotional intelligence and maturity in these things. Um, so a longer campaign, I think that probably in small bites is easier than in a large campaign bite. Uh, your likelihood of dying is quite high, and it says so in the rules. So as much as I love the life path system, and I think that it should be here in this game, I'm very disappointed that it's not. That you may get so attached that you're really truly devastated when you either lose your anchor or lose yourself. Um, just briefly going through these things, you have a threat level, and the threat level is very important. Walkers are a constant threat in the world of the dead. You might be temporarily safe, but they're always hungry for your flesh. This is measured by a threat level on a scale from 0 to 6, indicating how active the dead are in the area around you. So the threat level is purely a mechanic for the zombies and how close they are. So once you get up to 3, they're aware of you, and 6 is like they're on top of you. So that it scales up as you either make noise or what's setting off a car alarm, as they give the example and stuff like that. Um, it identifies the principles of the game. So you're to survive. Your death is inescapable. You are never safe. You are not alone. You're telling a story, and the fiction comes first. Again, that's all well and good, and I like how it's on a dark background with it's on dark background. Again, it's like 10 Candles or like 10,000-Year-Old Vampire. If you're aware of that beautiful book, uh, you're going to be facing some very serious darkness. I cannot emphasize this enough. Pushing stress. So pushing is a year zero mechanic that really enables you to narrate how you push yourself further with a consequence. You fail your roll, you roll again. It's not as simple as that, and it's very implicit here. Oh, well, it's stated. It's not. It's stated clearly. If you're pushing your roll, GMs make sure that they explain how they've changed their method, what they've changed to try to succeed. Don't just say, well, oh, I failed my medicine roll. I'm going to push my roll. Don't let your player, have your player describe I've gone through my bag. I've got my tourniquet. I've got, I've got sutures that I'm using and I'm stitching it up. You roll. No, you fail. Well, now what are you going to try? Okay, well, I, I get my Bic lighter and I try to cauterize it, okay, and burn it closed. That's pushing your roll, right? So I think that as players, you need to be dynamic. You have to have a group that's really mature in the sense that they can come up with ideas. It really is a narration game. Though I do think mechanically it's solid. It's built on some good foundations in the Year Zero engine. And I feel it absolutely gets the feel of the world. Warning, 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 warning. All right, so stress points. When you push your roll, you're going to take a point of stress. So once you take a point of stress, you're adding that dice, as I spoke of before. And those custom dice that you have, or different colored dice, I mean, they're D6s. Do you need to spend $25 on dice? Well, obviously, I feel that I do. So if you mess up and roll a 1, there is going to be a consequence. And that consequence on messing up means that even if you have a success, something's going to happen. Uh, you're going to get noticed or something like that. You're using a D6. There's some choices between a double high and a double low roll. And when you're going around the table, you're going to roll dice, and whoever gets the lowest dice is going to be the one who's bit, if it's random. The way initiative works is basically it's a roll off, and if you're tied, well, it happens simultaneously. It's as simple as that. No complications, no cards, nothing like that. It's just very, very simple. Um, and a lucky dice. It's not for the players, it's for the GM. Essentially, I do this with my kids all the time. I did it with Coriolis, I did it with Vasen. I roll a d6 to see, okay, well, I'm going to use a third and something will happen, or I'm going to say 50% and something will happen. It's just, again, if you're a GM who's used to GMing, you know that it's all about percentages. And so percentage the hell out of your games. And if you think that there's a higher percentage, roll a lot of dice. If you don't, roll a single dice. Again, the flexibility is built into the system. Uh, the D60, there's a D666, and one is hundreds, one is tens, one is singles. That is for loot and random stuff that you find. I think that it's pretty good. I think that the tables in this game are very, very good. There's been some complaints about havens. There's only 3. Then you get another possible 3 later on in the GM section. But I do believe that it's positive. When you look at the amount of tables, the descriptions of NPCs, the options for developing NPCs, not just their looks, but their personalities, their strengths and weaknesses, um, this is solid. If you're an expert in something, the NPC rolls 10 dice. If you're not an expert and you're skilled, you get a certain amount. If you're talented, you get a certain amount. I forget if it scales from 4 to 8 to 10 or from 2 to 6 to 10, but there is a scale. All right, so let's just quickly skim through this. The wildfire virus just changes your life. And yeah, do we leave one behind? The value of life. The value of human life is constantly in question. Yeah. And so leaving someone behind is this should not be a game where you're playing D&D and you're just killing things and saying, all right, yay, let's see how much money they've got. Let's take their gold, let's take their stuff. Oh, they've got better armor than I do. Oh, it fits, yay. No, this is not where the value of life does not matter. This is a very serious issue in this game. Do you leave one behind to save many? Who gets to eat when food is scarce? What do you eat when food is scarce? You're not going to be living on lentils and beans and vegetables and stuff like that. Um, you may not find any of that. You may not find canned foods. You may not be aware in your survival role of what is good to eat and what is not good to eat. Um, I mean, I don't think any of us in the woods would know what mushrooms we can eat and what mushrooms we can't eat, or what plants we can eat. Um, and yes, there is an amount of protein that you need, but where are you going to get it? And with fields not planted, crops are not there unless a haven has planted and has got that skill set. And if they do, then they are a place that you want to be. And it may be a horrific place, a la the TV show. So There are advanced communities. And of course, you bash them in the brains, and that's how you kill them. Nature and vegetation has overcome the world. Again, use your GM sense because it they say that it happens quickly. Quickly enough, maybe 5 to 10 years. So is this 5 to 10 years after the event, or is this recent? If it's recently after the event, you may find that this is a problem. If one of your players is playing the kid, did the kid does the kid only know this way of life? And that's a question for the character who's playing the kid. Is it has it been 5 years, and the kid's only memory is from running away from zombies? So there are some dynamics that you have to think about when you come to the table about how long has the distance been between the event. And again, if it's recent, everything is pretty much the same as what we see around us today, because essentially the world of today is our benchmark of what we can do. And again, you don't have to play in Atlanta. You can play in your own neighborhood. With kids, I'm not going to do that because as 14 and 15-year-olds, I don't want them going around and saying, well, I kill Uncle Jack. No, that's not going to fly, not with me at least. Moving through, yeah, that there are options for no archetypes where you can create freely without using the archetype. You just have to choose your key attribute, key skill, starting talent. You do the gear with the GM's approval, and you need to come up with your issue, your drive, and your relationships. That's essentially it. It can be as easy as pie to come up with your character, and as difficult as you want. I prefer going to a backstory where what do your parents do? What do you have siblings? How old are you? And how was your life before this event? What did you look like before the event? What do you look like now? Um, and I'm not really interested with the kids with their nationalities or whether or not, I'm not interested in playing the racial aspect of the game, but you may tread lightly. This is holy ground for the individual who's playing a character. So be very, very careful about what you may think is acceptable. And so I have been on this channel always saying, I don't understand why we have lines and veils and X cards. For a fantasy game, pretty much, I guess, no. Playing online, it's really changed my mind. And I must say that I now get the nuance of why those are important and why session zeros for online gaming are really important, or if you don't know people around your table. But if you're playing with friends or an established group, you pretty much should know what you can and cannot do and what the individual's preferences are. But this game blows a lot of stuff like that out of the water, and it just, again, danger, danger, warning, warning, warning. All right, so issues, drives, attributes, skills, all very basic, basic, basic. Scars, I've gone over skills, health points, 3 strikes, and you roll. Talents are just like any year zero engine game. Your talents are your talents. I think they're handled very well, actually. Handling your fear. Add 2 dice for each anchor who is still alive when you're handling your fear. So when you're pushed beyond your limits, at the end of a session, the GM will go through a list of breaking points on a certain page, and if any of these things happen to you during the session, you need to roll a handle your fear roll. So you get this fear roll. Those who play Vaesen should be, kind of aware of that type of roll. You get +2 for each anchor who is still alive. You do not add stress dice. So an added mechanic at the end of the session to see, has the fear changed you? in a narrative way and in a mechanical way. Breaking points are being killed, an anchor getting killed or disappearing, an anchor turns against you, um, you kill or brutally beat someone who can't defend themselves, you were broken by damage, you accumulate 5 stress. Something you built or struggled hard to achieve, such as your haven, gets destroyed. These are breaking points. Now, listen to the wording of that. You kill or brutally beat someone who can't defend themselves. This is dark. This is not D&D. Um, and and it's not Vaesen, an investigation game. It's not Coriolis, which can be all sorts of things. You're dealing with raw emotions of survival. This is a roller coaster. You can lose your drive. Shattered, the whole group will decide together when it seems like the PC has healed enough to stop being shattered, but you may talk to dead people if you're shattered, seeing dead people, think walkers are alive, protect one special walker, we've seen that in the TV show, wants to die, emotionally shut off, involuntary rage, paranoia, obsessive compulsive behavior. These are all very serious psychological conditions. And I know that whenever I've looked online about lines and veils and X cards, often psychological trauma, PTSD issues, issues raised like that, you even see it in Starforged. It's written into the rules to, and many times individuals, it's a solo game. And I remember, I'll never forget this, reading in the forum a person saying, well, you may be playing the game and you may trigger yourself. I'm not sure, but if that is the case, this game is going to set off triggers. And you may come across something that you weren't aware that was very deep. If you're a player, your GM is not your therapist. And if you're a GM, you're not a therapist, unless you are a therapist, and then you should know better than to counsel your friends or people around the table. Just be very careful. I think the debriefing afterwards is not the GM or each other being, we're not doing kind of group therapy, but an opportunity to debrief is kind of like flushing the emotional toilet, or at least making a break between where you were and in the game, where you're fully encompassed in this world, and then moving on to something else. I think that this is the type of game where if you have one of those perpetual people who are on their phones or on their pads, this is not going to be fun for the rest of the group. It's not going to be fun for you as a GM. It's not going to be fun for themselves, or they're showing that this ain't fun. I would ban any type of electronic stuff. I would just use paper and pencil for this game, for the players, so that they are immersed in their characters. Yeah, I talked about shatter. Gear is gear. Armor. Armor isn't useless. If you roll 4 dice and you do get a success, which is, I think it's a fair enough. It's almost 50%. If you're suffering -1 for your mobility, but you're getting the opportunity of maybe canceling out a hit, that may be the decision between life and death. But is that vest and the -1 mobility worth it? Certainly wearing body armor and having a -3, but rolling whatever the dice are, 8 or 6 or something like that. Is that worth it? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it, but it's more of a Coriolis type of mechanic that's in there. You have monologues that I think are very cool. The questions for XP are also very telling. The participation in the game is just a given. Did you achieve something important? Okay. Uh, did you learn something? For both questions, what did you learn? What's important? Did you explore at least one new sector on the travel map? Again, it's implicit that you're supposed to be moving, 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 moving. Did your drive or your issue or any of your relationships make an impact on the session? Again, the narrative is going to give you a benefit. And if you want your character to evolve, you have to involve your background story. And if you don't, then you don't understand the way your zero engine games work. Did you hold a dearly departed monologue? So the dearly departed monologue are opportunities, I think, as well to narrate, to write a letter, a mental letter to someone in the past as a fictional character, but it's also a way to debrief. Everybody gets an opportunity to do this. I believe it's at the beginning of the session. It should not be a recap of the last session. It should be that person's inner feelings about the situation. So yes, they're describing what happened, but from an emotional, invested standpoint. This is not just, and we went to the bus, and the zombies came around, and we were able to get off the top of the bus, and we were able to jump off, and we left that PC or the NPC who's in the wheelchair in the bus, and she's dead now, and that was last session. No, you know, dear Alfonso, I'm. Yesterday we had to leave, Betty inside the bus. Um, the walkers were everywhere. The walkers were surrounding us, and my heart was breaking as I saw her screaming and yelling for help, and why Tom was leaving her, even though Tom was her closest friend. But that's the level of depth that we're looking at. So the experience is experience, relationships and all that stuff. I'm not going to go through all of that. The Havens, I think that it is good enough. I think that if you give too much detail for the havens, you may get stuck wanting to stay in your haven. But again, the whole point of the game is to move, is to survive. You're going to run out of food. You're going to run out of stuff. You don't want to have nothing but basically the opposite of shopping, which is, and we spend the day planting our seeds. Well, the reason why there's 5 NPCs is that the GM is going to be pushing you. Now, there could be an accusation that you're going to be railroaded because of the actions of these NPCs. No, I think that the agency is still on the characters. It's incumbent upon the GM to be able to frame a story of survival and of an emotion and an emotionality around the attachments that the PCs have to these group of NPCs around them, and what happens when people start dying off or suffering under the stress. The archetypes are very basic. I am okay with them, but I think that they're, again, very generic. The criminal, the doctor, the farmer, the homemaker, the kid, the nobody, the outcast, the politician, the preacher, the scientist, the law enforcer, and the soldier. Very reminiscent for me of Tales from the Flood, Tales from the Loop. Very generic. Nothing to me that stood out. I want something more. I want the office worker. I want the person who's the call center person who's staying at home and has been on I want, the 32-year-old who's still at home with their parents who's playing Xbox. I want the convenience store person. I want to have not the priest. I want to have the older uh, church woman or church man who rings the bells or counts the money, or who is in there and who's just going and doing the basic stuff like ironing the linens and stuff like that. Um, Not kind of, oh, well, this is the priest or this is the leader of the congregation. I think we focus too often on these stories about having the kind of heroic leaders instead of the basic people. Um, I forget his name, but there was a delivery person. That was his job. He was a delivery person, and of obviously agility being a major benefit to that person, who grows as a character, and falls in love, and is there's tragedy, and so yeah, like like the TV show, it can be an emotional roller coaster. That's why I say I really think that you got about 10 with a campaign. And if you go beyond that, good on you. It's like watching the TV show. I think that there are a fair number of people in my experience who just stopped. And they stopped because it started to become either samey or too emotional as it got darker. Um, there's only so much darkness that I think a person can handle before they want to start laughing again. I think that you can laugh in this game. I think that there are going to be funny moments, but I think they're going to be far fewer than what we believe. This is not, and I've said this repeatedly, but I can't emphasize this enough. This is not just bashing zombies' heads in. If you're coming into it with that type of mentality, you're not aware of the TV show and the universe, or you're not aware of the subtleties of the situation of an apocalyptic disaster of this scale. Think of how everybody felt during COVID. Well, times that by 1,000. So anyway, just gonna kind of quickly look through this. I talked about stress dice, skill lists. I think that pretty much I've gone over the details. Duels are duels. You have a result and an effect. You have range. There's three different distances. They're short, 25 up to 25 meters. There's long, which is 25 to 100 meters, and then there's 100 meters plus for extreme distance. So that's, you know, that's what it is. I like the fact that it's easy, it's condensed, makes sense. 25 meters, anybody can kind of get from point A to point B in that period of time, and do something. So I think that that's good. Um, you may get ganged up on and have multiple attackers against you. Messing up is a major issue in the game. Messing up, there's a d6 of messing up in combat, so you might be out of ammo, hurt oneself, hit a friend with friendly fire, you attract walkers, and your threat level is raised by 1. Your overall situation gets worse, or bad positioning. Um, Brawls are a thing. You're going to take cover, rolling for mobility. You're going to have range combat, close combat, movement, first aid, and other. Other being, you know, the GM decides if the action requires a skill roll, if you want to barricade a door, or hotwire a car, or explosive, something like that. Um, Damage and healing, again, it's 4, 6, and 8, so -1, -2, -3. It's metal-plated armor for 8 dice to roll, and then that gets subtracted from the attack. I do think that it's important in the game, but if you're choosing to take that could be, it's going to slow you down significantly, and it may not be to your benefit. Critical injuries are the same as most of the game. As I've said, the medical equipment is divided into B and A, basic and advanced. Advanced being needing much more than just a medical kit bag. Uh, Messing up when stabilized, you have a 1 to 4, so medical equipment is broken. But if you fail the roll, your medical equipment is broken or depleted. So kind of the same type of things, messing up when stabilizing. So messing up is rolling a 1, so you can succeed, but also roll a 1 and mess up. So there's a consequence, right? And just looking at the critical table, B days is a damaged throat starting at 31. Everything below that, as it were, is non-lethal. The lethality goes up to 46, where it becomes A's. And then, yeah, 43, 63, 64, 65, 66 are all you die. So the critical injury table is decent and rough. You have things like poisons and explosions and disease. You get gear. I think that this is nice to be able to see what your options are. It certainly shows the katana, the baseball bat covered in, chicken wire or barbed wire. You've got a machete. You've got, your AK-47 and stuff like that. Guns. If you're playing as a good GM, it's going to be, that's a resource. Just getting enough ammunition is going to be an issue. Vehicles, you've got issues of gas and supplies. So it's constantly supplies. Where are the supplies? Well, the supplies are generally in havens because they have gathered up all the stuff around the region. So, you're not going to be like in a dungeon where all of a sudden, oh, look, it's a potion of healing. It's not going to work. It should not work in this game. And then it goes through other things. So you do have a walker attack effect table. Damage in combat is different from people and from walkers. When you have a walker attack, you roll a d6 and it will tell you what happens. 66 is you're overwhelmed by walkers that tear the flesh from your bones. You are dead. Two ones are, they come after you, but you got away, take 1 point of stress. So, good stuff. It tells you how to fight a swarm. And it talks about the threat level being 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, it's going to be bad if you're up to a threat level of 6. It's a mass attack. There's the force. There's the close combat. This is desperate. Again, the havens I think have a lot of good tables. You have haven issues, such as what happens within the haven. So there's rats everywhere or not enough clothes and mattresses and blankets. Remember pests, rats, dysentery. These are issues, that arise. Cholera. These are issues that arise. We're talking about a very, in some cases, dystopian reality, and a reality that is so brutal that the environment, not washing can be an issue. So you do have, kind of projects that you can repair, say, a radio or something like that, make a pipe bomb. Again, there's a few instances of being on the run for rations, trying to find things. It talks about running the game on page 96. So that's about 2/3 of the way in. Talks about the core concepts and everything that you need to understand. The NPCs are given a name. These are factions. So the faction is given a name. How many of them are there? What's the type? What holds them together? What's the leadership like? What type of resources do they have? What are their needs? What are their issues? What is their haven? What sector is it located in? Who are the important NPCs? and what will happen to the PCs if they don't if they don't confront or handle the faction. And again, there's lots of tables here to build the haven, not your own haven. And I think that the criticisms that I've heard about, well, there aren't enough haven examples. There's not enough good haven building like in Mutant Year Zero. I think more and more that's intentional, so that you're forced into an NPC haven where you're forced into social interaction and stressors that come from that as opposed from the zombies. So I think that they do deal with it well. I'm very happy with what I see. Swarms, you have direction. You have weather dice to tell you what things, but everybody's got their own system. I don't think that you have to be a slave to that. You've got the challenges, and again, it has what the needs are: tools and equipment, medicine, water, food, consumables like warm clothes, sanitary pads. These are important issues that we just take for granted. Stop the tax on sanitary products. All right, so yeah, weather, ruins. Okay, so you've got ruins, you've got a table for ruins, and then you've got a table for wilderness. So with D66, and you roll a 25, a hole or cannon where walkers fell in but cannot get out. You have various encounters, and D66 people. So if you roll a 53, you get Luke McGowan, an assassin, ranged combat, close combat. Yeah, they are expert in. They are trained in stealth. Their issues are they never play by the rules. Their secret issue, and everybody has a secret issue, only loyal to himself, or, yeah, I guess when Luke, it's himself. Hunting rifle, shovel, knife, Vespa scooter, 4 rations, pet cat named Cindy. That's Luke McGowan. I must say that I wish that the names were a bit more dynamic. There's a lot of how would I say this? There's a lot of kind of generic names and not enough kind of ethnicities present uh, in this D66 chart. At least as I'm looking down there, there's some, but you as a GM can deal with that, right? Walkers are approaching. You as a GM can roll a D6 and figure out if it's within seconds or too far to find their way here, which would be a 6. So, NPC and animals, you have a whole bunch of animal attacks. An alligator is 6 attack dice with a damage of 2 and a health of 4. A wolverine is, and we're not talking about the guy with the slashy hands, 5 attack dice, 1 damage, 3 health. So you're making the scene come alive as they specify. They talk about the Atlanta campaign. They give you a beautiful map. Their maps are gorgeous. They talk about swarms and locations, and the walkers, the type of walkers they are in the appendix, what walker wounds they have, the empty rooms, random locations are described very well. This is why I think that the havens are not as built up as some would like, is because you have these options to the GM. So I think that in a way there is a bit more control on the GM to provide the environment, but again, you're there to create the environment and the situations for your players, but you're not there to be the stars. You're there to be, you're there to encourage them and to have them live out their characters and fulfill that desire to live in this world, and to give them opportunity to be heroes, and opportunity uh, to rise above the mire of this desperate situation. You have NPC features, you have NPC issues, you have their secret issues. So if a character wants to have a secret issue, or if that's just an issue that you want them to have, you have a D66, table that you can roll on page 146. Scavenging. The scavenging is what the D666 is. They do have a solo play built in at the end. I know who created the solo play. It looks solid, but I don't know too much. I think that oftentimes we overlook solo rules as GMs, thinking, oh, well, pish posh, it's for people who play solo. But I think that there's enough stuff here in terms of the mess up oracle, the theme oracle, that this can help you prepare your game as a GM with the other tables that are provided. So don't just think that the solo play rules are unimportant or do not affect your table. They very much can. Utilize them as you see fit, but they should not just be disregarded. The character sheet leaves much to be desired. It is very, very basic, very dull from my perspective, though if you're playing in a dark world like you are, this is pretty good. It's not bad on the ink, so you don't have to have the a color version or a black and white version. I think that this is adequate. It shows the PC anchor and the NPC anchor, and that is right there on the top, right underneath the Walking Dead Universe AMC role-playing game. Oh my gosh. You've got a name, archetype, description, drive, issues. Your drive has a box because you can check that off. I like how they do attributes and skills. You have your strength, and then you have close combat, endure, and force. So if when your players are adding up their math and saying, okay, well, my strength is this, my agility is this, my health is this, they can very quickly add up how many dice that they need. Sometimes it's not intuitive. I think that this layout across is a very good layout. You've got your talents, you've got your health, and of course you have unharmed, and then you have bruised with a box, battered with a box, and broken with a box. So, and then you have a line for 4 critical injuries. Smart. Gear, you've got your gear with the bonus. You've got stress, experience, and encumbrance. Encumbrance is a thing. You've got tiny items and a split space for tiny items. I like that because tiny items do not affect encumbrance. And I like how the gear section is divided up into 4 little segments. So you can have a couple of things on each of those lines if you need. You've got stored items and where they're stored. And of course your weapons. The other sheet is a haven sheet. It gives a description of your haven, the projects that you're in the process of working on. If you're going that in depth and you're building your projects and stuff like that, I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know. I just can't see it being a thing where you're keeping, it says workforce and the finish date. I think that the devastation of the conflicts between interpersonal relationships and the zombies are going to make this just a useless sheet. But with that said, it does have who the NPC survivors are and what they're doing. So if you are having a campaign within a haven, and your campaign is in the haven, and then you go out and you come back, and you're constantly going out and coming back, then maybe this is more important as opposed to being on the run. So yeah. Then you have the challenge sheet. The challenge sheet marks down issues, rumors. It's got a clock for the rumors. You've got challenges, endgame with a clock, factions with a clock, and then you have NPCs. That's the end of the beta, and that was a total of 163 pages. A little light for my liking. It will have, of course, scenarios, so that will pump up the amount of pages. Again, I would have liked to have seen, especially with this type of game, something that was drawing you in a bit more with developing your life path. And that's the only criticism. I think that, yes, if you're interested in this style of game and going into the depths of despair that it can elicit, go for it, buy this game, get it. You're going to be satisfied. Make sure you're playing with people who all want to play that type of game. Other than that, I think that it is a solid Free League Year Zero engine game. I think that it's good to have on your shelf. I think that there are a lot of takeaways that you can have from this game as a library item to be able to draw on and look at. Is it going to be as good as say Vaesen? I don't think so. I still think that to me is at the moment the pinnacle of Year Zero engine games. And I think that in terms of their other games, I know that a lot of people think that Symbaroum is the pinnacle of the non-Year Zero engine games. I think that it's the One Ring. The One Ring is beautiful and a very well designed and conceived. So I like that very, very much. But with that said, Year Zero engine games kind of build upon each other in a way, and they are evolving. It's not samey, and I believe that this is, to me, the most dark. I think this is darker than Alien, and Alien's pretty dark, and does beg for conflict within the group and shoot-ups between individuals and stuff, and those type of psychological stresses. I think because this isn't set in space in a fantasy future, I think that this has great potential for disturbing people. Disturbing in a good way and disturbing in a bad way. So you weigh that yourselves. This has been long enough. Thank you all, whoever has gone on this long to watch this video. It's very rare that I do kind of this much of an in-depth review, but because I'm running this with my kind of youth, I thought to myself, okay, how am I going to get my mind around this game? What are the potential problems, and what do I need to be aware of to address? And how do I get my mind around the threat level, the stresses, the push mechanic, the drives that are keeping you going, and the issues, how you attach yourself to an NPC and a PC, where that relationship is so important that it actually can build you up. So I think that it's a great implementation of the engine. It's certainly a value, but it has great potential for red X's and veils and lines and all sorts of stuff. Tread carefully with your group. Take care. Have great gaming sessions, and I'll see you with another video. Probably my next one will be kind of a report on how things went. Bye.